I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's 6:01. On our consent agenda, we have our prior minutes and a number of policy readings. Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, if none, then I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda. We'll do that by roll. Erin? Aye. Kat?
Aye.
Polly?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
And Mary is an aye. Lynn, any need to reprioritize the flow of the meeting this evening?
Yes, actually, I would like to switch, I would like to go ahead of Morgan because there are some
Okay.
things under my report that may impact budget.
Okay. All right. Before Morgan. Okay, sounds great. And it doesn't seem as though we have anyone virtually for public comment, but we do have a guest and he, there with you. Does Jared want to talk for public comment?
No, thank you.
Okay, all right. Anyone else, Morgan, that I can't see?
Nobody else, no other visitors.
Okay, great. So then that moves us on to our spotlight. And our first is our spotlight with our family engagement coordinators.
Hi, everybody. I am going to, on behalf of our family engagement coordinators, I'm going to do our slideshow tonight. We had planned to have people join us, and because of a variety of different scheduling conflicts and people's illnesses, many of us couldn't be in the room tonight. So I told them I would present on their behalf. So I do have and I wanted to make it very brief because I know we have a lot on the agenda tonight. So I have a brief slideshow that I'm going to share with you. Can someone enable my screen sharing?
You should be all set.
There we go. Okay. And go here. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. I can't see any of you while I'm presenting, so I'm gonna rely on you to stop me if you can't see something or have questions. So I wanted to share with you on behalf of our family engagement coordinators in the district tonight, just some brief highlights. So each of them chose one or two things about their role that they are particularly proud of, that they wanted to highlight with you. So I have presentations from Melanie Gross, who's serving Richford Elementary School, Amy Lovelet Jarvis, who serves Bakersfield, Berkshire, and Montgomery schools, Bridget Adams, who serves Enosburg Middle and High School, and Janessa Higgs, who is in Enosburg Elementary School, and Joanna Droz, who technically is not a family engagement coordinator. She's a school social worker in Sheldon and is under kind of the Sheldon NMV budget. But she also couldn't be here with us tonight because she has her own board, school board meeting tonight that she sits on. So I'll start with Richford Elementary. This is from Melanie. So Melanie really wanted to highlight some of the work that she's doing around community engagement, working with the kids go over to Our Lady at the Meadow on a pretty regular basis, and they do some work with them. There's also some really engaging bulletin boards they've been working on at school, and they've done outings to places like the public library, the town hall. So she's been working really hard to engage students in getting out in the community and also bringing community members into our schools, which is not one of the highlights she has here, but she's been doing a fantastic job of really stepping up the engagement levels of Richford Elementary School, and being full-time this year has been able to make a really solid impact. I know some of you got the benefit of listening to her presentation, I think at your local board, the ER board, and all the work that she's doing there. So it's just been a really fabulous role for her this year. Janessa is at the Enosburg Elementary School. The two projects she wanted to highlight were her care closet and community fridge project. So they started a care closet with donations of money, clothes, hygiene products, winter jackets, ski pants and boots. Grady's Golden Goodness gave them a donation of materials as well. And they've also started an Amazon wish list where families have indicated needs, and they're able to publish that in their newsletter, and people can go and purchase the items that are requested on that Amazon wish list. There's also personal hygiene supplies. She's wanting to investigate how to do weekend and vacation bags through the food bank, which will increase the amount of food and food security that her families can receive with weekends and vacations. And also there's some donations of snacks that they have available for students, particularly students who need them. But the community fridge is kind of a mini fridge at this point and is available to anybody who needs it. So those are two projects that she wanted to share. Amy is working in Bakersfield, Berkshire, Montgomery on truancy and parenting skills. So she, I have a note from her that I'm just going to reference. She's working with families sometimes she makes plans to visit in the morning if needed, to kind of help with creating routines and incentives for families to be able to really encourage students to go to school. And it's work that she does with them so they can sort of maintain and sustain that effort over time. So she works with the students and families on the barriers that are holding kids back from being able to attend school regularly. And then she takes that information back to the principals to work on how the school can accommodate and make students' day feel more successful. This year, she's worked with 4 families where students were struggling to attend school and now are going to school on a daily basis. So it's a real win. Bridget Adams is working at Enosburg High School, and one of the a big focus of her work is working with the students in the STEPS program and one of the alternative programs there. She's providing support during transition for students. So we have students who are entering the program, and she's helping them sort of find their ground, communicating with families, acting as a liaison between the school and the program, offering really individualized and personalized supports to students and families, and also helping to support parents and guardians as an advocate or a support person during meetings and for whatever their needs are. Oops, I think that is the last one. I guess that's my last slide. So I think that it's important to know that all of these folks have a different aspects that they function in, and these are just some of the highlights that they wanted to do. I think one of the strengths of this program is that students, each of the different family engagement coordinators are able to work under their own kind of strengths while they are serving the needs of the buildings that they serve. And I think I can stop sharing and open it up if there are any questions.
Thank you, Michelle. It's interesting to see how, as Michelle was trying to say, in terms of the approach for each of the family engagement people, they may have chosen different entry points, but they're all working on the same outcome. And it's really engaging communities and engaging families and getting kids to school and getting some of the needs met across the SU. And I think that it is making a huge difference for some of our students and some of our families.
Yeah, I think that one of the things also we've noticed is that Melanie, those 3 of them are in their 2nd year and really are finding a groove this year and finding a way to really make an impact. And I think Bridget came into us brand new and has really started to find her niche as well. So I'm really impressed with the work that they're all doing, and I think they're bringing a valuable resource to students and families in our district.
Thanks so much, Michelle. I appreciate you sharing that.
I have a question. So, because they're all different entry points, but is there a common thread around like attendance or anything that they're all dealing with, or is it more just community engagement?
No, it's both. So they're all working in attendance at different levels. It depends a little bit, like with Amy, especially being in 3 different buildings, it's hard for her to be like the point person for attendance, but she is responding when there's an identified need of attendance with students. So yeah, they're all doing attendance work. They're all doing sort of reach out to families who need support services. They're providing gaps, like especially they're doing a lot of work with parenting skills and supporting parents in meeting some of those needs. If they might be financial needs, they might be resource needs. So they're all doing a variety of those different skills, and they just wanted to highlight different aspects of the role. But they're all doing some very similar work as well.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Michelle. So Gab is up with our next spotlight for the evening.
How does this work for you? Do you man it?
I can if you want me to.
Well, I'm just not presenting on Zoom. I could have Brittany present it though. Would that be easier?
I can share my screen and it will be on Zoom.
Okay.
Yeah, that's okay. I already have it up as well.
Okay. So I've got Brittany Young here with me on Zoom, joining us from Arkansas. She's been doing a lot of this work, and we're gonna kind of explore the portrait of a learner and the process of evidence, high school, and then down. Brittany's done some work at the K-6 level, so I'm gonna let her present on that. One of the big shifts about Portrait of a Learner is that kids are creating evidence, and this process of like creating evidence versus just taking a class and then moving on. So this is a really important part of this process, and we're doing a lot of experimenting with it. So I'm going to show you some examples of evidence and then also some tools that we've been using to help kids get to the point where they can be more independent learners. So next slide. And if you can click on the left-hand slide, this is actually, it's on our website, so if you ever wanted to see it again, but on the left picture. This is a graduate's.
This one?
Yep. It should, hopefully it works.
Would it be easier, since Brittany's on Zoom, if she shared? Would that just be easier?
I don't know.
We can do it that way. Brittany, are you comfortable with sharing since you're on Zoom?
Yeah, no problem. I can do that. I have it pulled up.
I'll start my screen. I don't have access to, so.
Got it. Yeah, no problem.
Oh, you don't
Sorry,
have
let me
access
just
to
go back
that.
into a split
Yeah,
screen here.
They're just telling me I had to close this in. The color on document.
It's not a document, it's the website.
Oh, I don't know.
All right. Here we go. Apparently, it's not going to work for me either. I am sorry. Not sure.
It's just a link to our website. Maybe I put the wrong
You
one.
want to pull up the site?
Yeah, can you pull up the site?
What
What
is the site?
on this? It is just our,
So I think we just take out the sites.google.com off the front, it might work.
Yeah, we don't do that.
All right, let me try that. I'll go back over to the slideshow. Let me try this. What were you thinking? I heard somebody in the background say maybe you can take off.
If you take off the sites.google, that whole part, and then start at FNESU.
This part here?
Yeah. And that's
Okay.
the part.
Let's see. Is that what you were hoping for?
of course I can't see it.
No, it just went to the district site.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, click on the other picture and we'll look at Carly's evidence.
Okay.
Very strange. I mean, it's right on the website.
This one seems to be working.
Okay, so This is a current senior. We're also I'm following the same portrait of the learner element. So contributor, we're gonna follow the evidence all the way through. So this is Carly's evidence, and she did a whole project, and you can see her evidence. The evidence itself is just a slideshow, and then she has put together sort of the whole process of her project. And then if you scroll, if you click on that, can you click on that picture and make it big with her standing in front of her project? So thanks. She's so savvy with that. So Carly did a project where you can see the word beauty, and then she did a bunch of interviews with female students and took their pictures and did like a whole thing on body image and women. So she did like a little research project, and this was under the contributor category. So this is an example of an advanced piece of evidence from a high school level. So you can go ahead and get out of there. The other one is a collection of various community events that May was involved in either collaborating or actually doing. She did a color run. There was a Enosburg movie night that she organized. I think there was one other in there. So it's right on our website if you want to look at it. All right, Brittany, you want to go to the next slide?
You got it.
So at the middle school level, students are not as savvy as Carly and May at the 12th grade level. And our middle school advisor, Casey, is using this tool with students to sort of help them work through flexibly wherever they are in the category. So if you look at contributor, there's sort of three things. One is just sort of completing a class. So on U.S. government, learning about, sort of rules and laws and how things work. And then the next checkbox is participating in a community meeting. So we have been trying, not that successfully, to do community meetings, and representatives from each advisory come to those community meetings and contribute, and that's sort of another level of evidence. And then the third level is like actually creating a project, which might happen at the middle school level in advisory or with some support in a class. Maybe it's part of a project, those kinds of things. But it's a collaborative sort of effort about finding something in your community and then making a difference with that.
Do you think we could go into slideshow mode just so that we could see a little better?
Can you put it in slideshow mode, Brittany, so they can see?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. There you go.
Here we go.
So the one that we're looking at is just contributor, but each category has sort of different things, different ways that students could be demonstrating evidence or building a skill building that skill if that's where they need to do it.
Are they tiered? Are the 3 boxes for contributor?
I mean, not specifically, but kind of. It's developed. The tool is developed so that there's multiple entry points. Not everybody comes in ready to like design a project and carry it out and collaborate and do that. And so there's sort of different entry points.
But they're not weighted.
No,
Gotcha.
there's no like grading to this. It's just a way to have the conversations about creating evidence and also learning what does a skill look like, because these are new skills for them to learn. So it's another way for them to figure out what the skill is. All right, I think you're up.
All right. I am going to try to move through this as quickly as I can to stay on time here. So I apologize that you can't see me, but hopefully you can see these images. When we wrapped up the school year last year, I met with every student in FPA, and I asked them what it was that they really were passionate about, wanted to learn about in the following year. And I have been working with people all throughout the community and beyond on creating units that are specifically around these students' interests, but then also pulling in all of the POL expectations as well as our priority standards in the district. And I just want to take a minute to kind of show you how that all lines up. So one of the big focuses, as Gab was just pointing out, is around community involvement. And we at FPA have been looking at the needs in the community and, you know, a little bit beyond just the neighborhood community, but kind of stretching out and seeing where we can go with that. And we've also been focusing on careers and how that contributes to building a community. So this year, we've been really lucky that we can combine in-person field trips as well as having the virtual guests join us. And we've already, in the few months we've been in school, we've had artists, both local and beyond, join our classroom. We've had writers, we've had the director in development for development and outreach at the animal shelter at North Country Animal League, which was a huge partnership for the unit that we are currently completing. And we've had cybersecurity, scientists, CDL truck drivers, animators, people from all different worlds and walks of life. And in the images you see here, this is all from our partnership with NCAL. Over the past 2 months, our students have been working on community projects around animals and getting people in the community involved and persuading them to get involved in volunteering, donating, or adopting animals from NCAL, which is a Vermont animal shelter. And I'm going to show you both the rubrics that align with the Portrait of a Learner in the K-6 model, and then also how that's connected to our grade level standards. So this here is an example of a rubric that I created this year with the help of Gabby, and each unit that I'm doing with students, and then some smaller kind of projects in between, are using this exact rubric model. So you can see straight from developing all the way to exceeding expectations, and then down the side, choosing about 4 per unit where they fit from that POL guideline that she had just shown you on an earlier slide. So for this particular unit, we focused on information savvy, creative thinker, independent decision maker, and contributor. And we look at this rubric actually every week. We have looked at this one for the past few months, so the students are pretty well versed in this rubric, and you can see that the language really changes depending on which direction you move from meeting expectations. This is really all about communication, understanding the information that you're communicating, giving it out clearly, and then also having that artistic side to it. So this was a 2-part project. The students created an artistic piece to their project as well as a written piece. And I'm going to give you an example of how we're linking this evidence. So just so that you have a better understanding of how the POL and the priority standards align, this is just one very small example of a POL, so information savvy. The orange part there is directly from our Portrait of a Learner. And then as you move across, you see in light orange, that's the expectation in information savvy. So information savvy is kind of a more broad topic, and then we get more specific as we go across. So the far side where you see green, blue, and purple, green is a kindergarten specific priority standard. Blue is the first grade, purple being 3rd grade. And these are all in one line because they all correlate with one another. And then the click here would bring you directly to the picture below, which has the same progression of learning that you would see on the rubric. So that language is very consistent for these students, no matter which classroom they're using it in, which teacher they're using it with, or which project. So this is just a little, hopefully to help understand how it breaks down with our students. And then on here, these are a couple of examples of student work. So the top picture was completed by a second and third grade student. They actually met in person to do this. They teamed up and made this art piece. It's actually made out of animal hair. Very significant because we're talking about animals in this project. And right now they are completing, putting in all kinds of information around this art piece that is directly connected to supporting NCAL. And this will be out in the community soon, which is really exciting. And then below that is a video. 2 5th grade students teamed up virtually to make this video. They never met in person. They wrote their script, filmed, edited, all from their own homes. And one of the students actually has a YouTube page and posted it on YouTube to really make this kind of full circle and real world out in the community. And their parents were very involved in kind of those steps of the way. So I thought it'd be nice for you to just see a couple seconds of the video. The whole thing is here. I know you have access to this slideshow, so you're welcome to watch it, but I'll just show you a couple seconds. So it's going to start about halfway through. Oh, you can't, sorry, hang on one second. I have to take out my headphones for you to hear it. Oh no.
Examples of volunteering opportunities are animal care volunteer, custom care volunteer, dog walker, junior volunteer, reading buddy, shelter ambassador, equine care volunteer, equine.
One of the things that these students really worked hard on was getting in a lot of really detailed information, as well as showing the NCAL website. So they worked on kind of all of those different components of layering when they were editing. And throughout the video, they tell tons of information about all the different ways that people in the community can help the animal shelter. So it's a really great watch. And then another example of student work that they may connect into their POL would be, oh, sorry, I don't know why it shrinks down on me when I apologize for that, is through their writing. So they have created, all of these writing examples are from different grades. So there are examples of the progression and how it kind of builds on from grade to grade. You can see a pretty clear difference as we go in these. But I just wanted to give you an example of both a project that might be connected as well as a written essay piece. And for the essays, we're also using the district checklist art. And then right here is an example of how the students connect their work. So they would actually link their project, their writing example, whatever it may be, right where you see example 1 or example 2. And then they move their smiley face as well. And we work on this every Friday together. They meet with one of the advisors in our school and they talk together. We move the smiley face, and the goal is by the end of 2nd grade, their smiley face has moved all the way to the end of the K2 expectations. And then by the end of 5th grade, the smiley face for 3-5 expectations has moved to the end. And we talk about really specifics around how the projects are connected to the different areas in the POL and why they've chosen to link that particular piece of evidence. So this is just a K2 example and a 3-5 example so that you can see how these students are linking their evidence of learning. And that is everything.
Thanks, Brittany.
Right there. Yeah, absolutely.
We didn't really introduce Brittany, but she's K6 literacy.
Thanks, Brittany. That was great.
Absolutely.
I have a question. The first two, Carly and May's, are they also, they're part of the flexible pathways, like the online school, or is it something different?
Both those students were in person.
In
not
person,
virtual.
just doing the flexible pathways.
Yeah, but
Gotcha.
yes, using the mastery transcript.
Got you.
So May graduated with mastery transcript and Carly's on her way.
So when you give us numbers about like enrollment, does it count those kids, or is it just the online kids you're giving us?
It counts those kids.
Okay.
It counts,
Okay.
it counts any student who's doing FPA in person. So using a mastery transcript, but in person.
But in person.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
In 9 through 12.
Can you,
9 through 12, yes.
Right. Okay.
Gab, can you clarify? I didn't know that there was flexible pathways in person.
So this is actually not new. Flexible Pathways has been available, I think we've been doing it, I think we're on year 5 or 6. We've had a few graduating classes. So before, pre-pandemic, we had Flexible Pathways High School, and those students are using the mastery transcript and have been. We've been doing that for that long, 5 or 6 years.
And those students can do that.
They can do it
either
in person.
Fully virtual.
Yeah, or
partly
in person.
in person, partly virtual.
Yeah.
Or fully in person.
Yeah.
It is truly a flexible way to experience their high school.
At this point, we have students who are fully virtual and doing a traditional pathway as well. If that makes any sense. So we've got it all.
Yeah, there was definitely like some confusion about the blending of the lines. Like,
Yeah.
is Flexible Pathways just our online academy, or is it Flexible Pathways which existed before? And then, like, where does ELOs fall into that too?
ELOs are just, unless the student is doing a mastery transcript, they're just a way to get credits. They're like they line up with the standards, and it's
Okay.
like in place of a class.
I got you.
But how are they in person? Like, where are they, I guess?
So there's a variety of places that people are. So, for instance, May would share with you, she took like every class she could. She was here full time all the time, and did projects outside of school. So that is one mode. Some students.
But like, I don't I guess I just don't understand.
What's flexible about it?
Right, like if they're there at school, but they're not participating in like the traditional classes that are being offered.
They could be participating, there's multiple ways to create evidence. So if a kid is doing a mastery transcript, the difference is they have to create evidence for their credits. So they have a different transcript.
All right, I don't want to take up too much time. I can figure this out at different time.
I think that what's a little bit confusing is we have the same name, right? So we have 9 through 12 Flexible Pathways Academy that existed pre-pandemic. And then we created a Flexible Pathway Academy option for K through 8 during the pandemic. And it's been something that's worked for several of our families, and it has been something that has allowed us to have the alternative programs that we have built, and for students to be able to have access to the licensed educators that they need in a flexible way. So I think that that is the tricky part, is we've centered many of our conversations on that K through 8 part of Flexible Pathways, and I think the questions now are kind of diving into the 9-12 and what has existed previously and still exists. So I wonder if that might be a future spotlight, is because the ER board gets more information about that CAT than the NMV or the SU board, because that, okay, now we're getting a little, that 9 through 12 program runs out of Enosburg High School. It's not an FNESU program. It's something that falls under the Enosburg Richford District Board. The K through 8 falls under the FNESU umbrella. That's kind of the difference. But I think it's, what she's asking is certainly valid, and we could bring information back at another time.
Yeah, that would be helpful, because like I think there's, still so much like mystery around it, so many people that still don't even know about it. So it'd be wonderful to just kind of like, you know, get that much more information. That would be great.
Sure. Of course, anytime.
Maybe we could have some kids come.
They would love to.
Yeah.
So-
Talk
yeah.
about FPA.
Right, because there was like I knew the flexible pathways thing existed, but then like kids did online with Vermont VLTs.
CVLCs.
Right. And then now, are they not doing that? And if they want to do online, they do it with flexible pathways? Okay, so there's that piece. So that makes it still part of like online academy.
Yeah, I mean, I think what
Yeah,
Pat's
all
asking
these
about, the
pieces.
big thing that makes it different is the master transcript. So whether they're here full-time, they're here hybrid, or they're totally remote, they're using a different transcript if they're doing, you know, if we're calling it flexible pathways.
Right. Yeah. You should see the transcript. I'm sorry.
I wanted to share, but I thought it would take too much time, but we took so much time anyway.
I know. Stay
Like
tuned.
Carly said I could
Stay
pull up the
tuned.
transcript and show the evidence right in there, which is
Yeah.
what I thought would be really cool, but I didn't want to take too much time.
Yeah, I get you.
One just last question. So for K through 8 and that piece of it, they do not have like traditional in-person options. Is that right?
Well, that's not entirely true, but
We're dabbling in person this year.
we've got some hybrid kids. We have some kids who are hybrid. We have one middle schooler for sure who's like really hybrid, like 50-50.
So that, it's similar, Kat, to when a family chooses to be homeschooled, they
Yeah.
can take up to 40% of their classes in the public school and still be considered homeschool. We kind of approached it the same way.
Okay,
If the
that
child
makes
wants
sense.
that flexibility of being an FPA, they still could say, well, you know, the parent could decide, or the child and the parent could decide, but math is hard for me to do this way, so I'm gonna go in person for math and do the rest of it in FPA. So
Okay,
that's what Kat's
gotcha.
talking about.
That makes sense.
We haven't had any K-6 students do that, but we do have a middle schooler, and we've had a few other situations where hybrid has been taken up as an option.
And you're doing some in-person field trips and social gatherings that you haven't done before.
Correct. All those things that Brittany shared were fully virtual students doing in-person field trips. We didn't do too many. We did the State House, the water park, and the NCAL. So we've done 3.
Thank you, Brittany and Gab, for sharing that. It's always, I think the board is always very interested when you start talking about the Flexible Pathways Academy, so.
Really hard to keep it 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Sorry. Thanks, Brittany.
All right, thank you both so much. So Lynn, we'll go to you now.
Okay.
Do yours first before Lauren.
Much of mine is informational and some of the data you've already received in advance, so I think I can go relatively quickly. Brittany's going to share my slideshow. Under personnel, you have one retirement that falls under the FNESU umbrella. So I would ask for the board to, well, I should have started at the top. There's information about hiring, and you have some resignations that have occurred. Those all fall under support staff. They don't require any board action, but the retirement of Sharon Moyer, who's a long-time, 30-plus year speech and language pathologist for FNESU. She's worked most of her career in Bakersfield and in Berkshire. So and Sharon actually was here before we had school-based programs. She was working here when we had the FNESU specific early childhood program, so that will be a loss. I'm gonna ask the board to make a motion to accept her retirement.
I'll move.
All right, we'll do that by roll. Erin?
Aye.
Kat?
I
Sarah?
Aye.
Polly?
Aye.
And Mary's an aye.
So I have a list up there of all of the remaining open positions. Any of the positions that were not filled previously, we're rolling them into a 23-24 advertisement with the what we're contending with in terms of attracting people in the workforce shortage. I'm not encouraging any of our leaders, and I'm not encouraging it for us in FNESU to wait until after budgets, because we've had such a shortage in applicants. We're trying to get those out just as soon as we know we have open positions. So I just want to make the board aware of that. We're not planning to wait for budget, by way of example, to advertise for Sharon's position. Okay. You've got some salary advancements in there. That's just informational. And I received a request earlier today from someone who works at Richford Junior Senior High School. I believe Jackie is a special educator. And she has a family trip that has come up, an opportunity to go with her family. It's 5 days. She has 3 personal days that she can use and can't apply any other leave to that trip. So she's asking the board to consider allowing her to take 2 unpaid days, and this trip would be second week in January. So she has enough leave for 3 and would like you to honor a request to take 2 unpaid days.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, by roll, Erin,
Aye.
Kat,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
Polly,
Aye.
Mary is an aye.
I don't have anything under student except really fun pictures of students and all of the great things that are happening across the SU. I know when Courtney builds these slideshows for me, she does a really great job of pulling in some of the activities that have been happening. And I think that one thing that is so common across the SU when I talk to leaders and I talk to others is the doors being open again to having our communities come in. You know, and I look at this slideshow and I think about all the things that I've been hearing this year about holiday meals and concerts that haven't happened in 3 years, and ski trips and performances, and you know, athletics with kids out and they're not wearing their masks anymore. There's a lot to celebrate with where we're at right now, and it's feeling like we're in a good place, better place than we've been in a while. So it's celebrating. Next up is pandemic decision making. So this is something that has been an every 6 month for the last 3 years, an every 6 month topic. You approved granting me pandemic decision making, and you requested that I bring this back to the December meeting for discussion. So my recommendation to you is, I feel like we have moved beyond this, beyond the need for you to continue to act on this, and I would recommend that you no longer consider this something that's separate from my typical job. I think that, like all the other things, this should just be an embedded responsibility of the superintendent to contend with whatever lies ahead with COVID-19.
Do we need to make a motion on
I don't think you,
I don't think
you
you
do,
do.
but you need to make, well, maybe, because you have been making a
that?
motion.
Motions to go into it, that's what I was wondering.
So maybe you make a motion to, I don't know how they would structure that motion.
I would make a motion to resume normal or previous decision-making flow.
I don't know that we need a motion. Like,
I don't think
know how we
so.
would. You're not gonna resume. What's that?
I said it's fun to listen to you come up with it.
I think that everything else falls under my umbrella.
Right.
It's just kind of silly that this would stay out there separate.
Right.
So I think maybe you say your decision is just that you no longer need a motion, because it's one of my duties.
Right, but didn't we make a motion because you didn't have to ask the board to make decisions around, but would you anyway?
Would I anyway in a typical year?
Or even without that?
Not.
Like if you were like, we need to close school for a month, you would
Well, I
come
mean,
to the
we would
board.
talk.
Well, that's what I mean, so that's what I'm saying, is like.
But I don't think we're there with the pandemic anymore.
No, but what I'm saying is that's why we gave you the authority to make like decisions without
Yeah.
our say-so. And so now you're going back to the kind of protocol of decision making,
No, I'm not recommending that it goes back to the board having to weigh in on it. I'm saying that the decisions related to the pandemic have lessened to the point where I don't feel that it needs to, I just think it needs to fall under the realm of responsibility of the superintendent without the board having to bring this up every 6 months and have this conversation. I think that if something were to happen and we were to take a turn in terms of public health and we were back in that place where I was making, hundreds of decisions on a
Right.
regular basis, the board could certainly bring it back and say, let's talk about decision making. But at this point, I don't think you need to delegate it as something separate. I just think it's part of my duty.
right?
I don't think we need to make a motion. I think if we wanted to do this another 6 months, we would make a motion to keep this going till 6 months from now. But if we just let it die out now,
I see what
right? I mean,
Polly is
that's my
saying,
take.
though.
Yeah, we gave you authority
Right.
to do things you normally wouldn't do. And so that's why I'm confused when you're like, oh, it's just normal. No, we gave you special authority.
So I guess maybe if you wanted to make a motion, the motion would be that you want me to make decisions related to public health and safety under my normal duties and responsibilities.
Yes, that.
How's that? That work, Michelle?
I like it. That's good.
Well, except so Lynn, are you saying though that embedded in that would now be any decision-making related to the pandemic if there were to be an uptick and, it's impossible to predict the trajectory. So are you saying that you would just move ahead kind of doing pandemic-related decision-making under your kind of normal kind of
My normal duties,
your normal duties, yeah.
yes. To be honest with you, Mary, I've been superintendent longer in a pandemic world than I have been not in a pandemic world. And so it's a little normal.
I don't think that we actually made any decisions. We like to think that we did, but I mean, the decisions were all coming from the Vermont Department of Health, the AOE. I mean, everything trickled down. Lynn brought it to us. And yeah, we sat around and said yay or nay, whatever it was. But I'm like with Lynn on this. I just think that I don't know. That's my take on it.
So in April, you made a motion to grant pandemic/endemic decision-making authority until the December 2022 meeting. So that had a
Right.
finite end to it, so I
So-
don't think you need a motion.
No. Yeah, it like
It's
lapses,
just
yeah.
clarity. Yeah.
But the
And
board
do
agrees that
you
it's just
feel
part
as
of my
though
duty.
by virtue of it lapsing, it implies that Lynn continues to have that authority moving forward into this endemic phase?
I think so, because now it sounds like it's again, kind of like, that's why I keep thinking it's reverting back to her normal decision-making process. Now it just happens to include pandemic decisions in that. I would say I don't think we would, but I have no crystal ball. If we were to go back into that lockdown world, I would say we would revisit it.
And I think that remember, this originally came out of something, I don't remember if it was the agency or it might have been something from the legislature, but there was something where, I think it came from the agency, where it was recommended that boards take a look at, there were two pieces, and this was one of the last remaining pieces, was about like delegation of authority, because boards couldn't work fast enough to make the decisions that needed to be made, so this was something that needed to happen at that time. But.
Right.
So are we saying no to we're all just agreeing that by default, this just falls under the realm of my responsibility, and if there was a huge shift and then, COVID 2.0 that came back, we would come back to the table and have a conversation about decision making.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So as part of your board monitoring plan, we don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but you're welcome to ask me any questions that you would like. I submitted to you quite a lot of data for you to review. So our first board goal is about all students reading on grade level by the end of grade 3, and we've talked a lot about, really being deliberate about the monies and our investments related to getting to that all piece and really supporting all of our learners. So I look at this as these are all pieces that I'm sharing with you today and that all connect to that big overarching goal. So you have some data in there about where our kindergarten students are on their concepts about print data. And just so you know, a lot of your reports that you're going to receive from me now are going to look like this, because this is part of our EduClimber, our common data platform that we're using across the SU. So blue is a really good color. Those are students who are excelling. Green is proficient, yellow is developing, and red is beginning. So we're pretty pleased with where our kindergarten concepts of print data is coming out. The PASS assessment data is another data point that's really a measure of phonological awareness, and so that I've given you some information about what falls under the realm of phonological awareness. And on the next slide, you have some data points from the fall PASS assessment for, I believe that was grade 1. Is that right, Jody?
PASS is kindergarten.
Kindergarten, okay. So you can see that we're able to identify those areas where students are doing pretty well at or above benchmark on this. The colors on this assessment result is a little different because of how the data is reported on this particular assessment. But what's really neat is we're able now for teachers to be able to look at this and teacher teams to be able to look at this and identify the areas when we look across. There are certain skills like students are doing quite well with rhyme recognition by grade level rhyme recognition, word discrimination, syllable blending, syllable segmentation, and we have work to do on phoneme recognition and rhyme production. So this is really useful data for us to look at and understand how we can support students moving forward. So the second board goal is around high school students, all students completing high school by demonstrating proficiency on graduation requirements as reflected in their personalized learning plan. So that's a 2027 goal. So one of the things that we talked about in our board monitoring plan was how can we report back to you on some of the student-centered practices that are happening in our school and the impact that that'll have in terms of readiness for our students to be able to do exactly what Gab just demonstrated to us in terms of building that body of evidence. So some of this data is incomplete. If you could go to the next slide, Courtney. This data point is around student-led conference and participation data across the supervisory union. I don't feel like this is timed really well on our board monitoring plan because most of our schools haven't chosen to do student-led conferences in the fall. They're doing spring student-led conferences, so we'll come back around to that data. We have some missing data sets from some of our schools. Another data point is around the percentage of students, sorry, not the percentage, the time embedded in the master schedule by grade level for students to work on either their PLPs or on advisory. So we were able to gather some of the time that has been set aside in our schools to just compare, where is it that some of this work would be happening in our schools and how much time. So this is an area that we have growth to do. We're working on embedding that across the organization. And we just wanted some, we wanted to understand how are people using that advisory time for student-centered practices and what does it look like in each of the schools. So we asked them in a survey to give us some examples of what happens in advisory in each of those schools. And as you can see, there are some commonalities, but there are also some differences. I'm pleased to see some of the changes that are being reported there this year. And I look forward to seeing even more next year. The next is a reporting of the percentage of students with active PLP plans by grade level. And we have some that are not at 100% and need to be, so we're gonna be working on some data points there to try to get all of our students with active PLPs. They'll need to be by the end of the year. And again, some data points are missing here. The third and final board goal is around the social emotional learning and all students being able to demonstrate proficiency by the end of each grade cluster. And one of the measurements that we are using as a predictor is student attendance in terms of social emotional learning. So we were able to pull some data from PowerSchool and look at what are student attendance rates by school, and that's really like from the beginning of the year till now, and last year's information until now. So you can see that last year was in yellow, this year is in blue. So pretty common across the board. In almost every single school, we've seen a pretty steep increase in attendance rates in our buildings.
I have a question. How has the rollout for the SEL priority standards happened throughout the buildings? Like, would you say?
No, purposely.
Right, okay.
Because when we did this work with our leaders over the summer, and we were talking about our 5-year plan for SEL, there was a common agreement that we needed to start with the adults first.
Right.
So this year, on purpose, we're focusing on adult SEL, and then next year we begin the first year. That's like the mandatory part of first year SEL. Many of our schools are already embedding the SEL work with their students. Not all, but many are.
Yep, that rang a bell, thank you.
Welcome. And then next up is teacher retention and recruitment updates. So one of the things that we had talked about as a strategy for both recruiting and retaining staff was an FNESU staff childcare center. We're running it through having our early ed director running that program and doing it at cost, so it could be an affordable option for families, and it would be an option only during the school year, which would also be a benefit to our families. We sent out an interest survey, and linked in your packet is the data. That's the raw data from the interest survey, and it was overwhelmingly positive. There's a high number of people who have expressed interest. If we create a program like this, they would be interested in shifting their children to some sort of FNESU childcare option. So that's data that I told the board that I would bring back as part of your discussion about where we want to go with that. So I know Melissa's not able to be here tonight, but I'm wondering, Morgan, if you could give a little bit of a partner project update on the childcare discussion we're having with other community groups.
So FCIDC, who is our new landlord at Central Office, has made a commitment to put some of the income that they're getting on the Pearly Bluff building into a regional childcare center. Jim Cameron, who did the development of our office, is also working on that initiative, and they are looking in Enosburg, and I think a little wider than that, for appropriate spaces to do that. That would be separate from the staff childcare that we're talking about, but if we had 20 seats or 40 seats or 60 seats, if anybody adds 20 to 40 to 60 seats in this area, it's going to help our staff. People who are driving here, if they've got childcare here, they're less likely to get poached by you all down in Maple Run, for example. And we may be able to use that to bring people.
I also think too, like, thinking about my experiences, preschool, right? Being able, like, if you don't have a daycare in the area, how do I get my kids from daycare to preschool and preschool to daycare if you're working? So you just forego preschool. And so just thinking about the opportunities for people to do that.
So that group has had a couple of meetings now with the Catholic Church here in town about using the parish hall. I went to one of them, and you know, for us, the real appealing point is that it's next to Cold Hollow, and we have this program there that we're trying to develop, so I think it would be a good connection for some work opportunity for those kids. My hope is that that's the extent of our involvement, because we are going to continue to pursue something that would be specific to our staff, and that is a very different model than what they're looking at. In terms of something for our staff, the limitation is space. Jim and CIDC have been kind of pounding the pavement looking for any space in the area, and they've pretty much turned over every obvious stone short of building. We are starting to do some investigation of modular classrooms for Sheldon, and so we're going to be able to start looking at what would that cost to do that. The challenge for us is that the supervisory union, we can't own real estate or buildings. We'll be talking later about the alternative program and the model that we're contemplating using there. That could be something that we did for the child care center for ourselves. The other possibility that's out there longer term is that the ERU board is going to give them the go-ahead to looking at the Cold Hollow building in that section. We've got the program there, you know, we can, you know, maybe look at what it would cost to add something off the end of that building, or where the Montipas is, and tie it in directly with that project. That would be something that that district would own, and either donate or lease back to the SU.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, I think for us, there's not a great update until we find a viable location. And we'll see, and I can't speak for Melissa, but if we're asked to go to a meeting, one of us will try to get to a meeting just to keep that moving on, even if it's not something that's going to be tied directly to our staff.
Okay. There is, can you go back one? There is a discussion I'd like to have with the board around a retention strategy that would fall under negotiations and would require an executive session conversation. And I think it would be important to have that conversation before you discuss budget.
Okay.
So Lynn, when would you like to do that executive session? Before Morgan?
Yes.
Okay. So do you want to finish up your report, and then at the end we'll circle into executive?
Sure.
Okay.
So next I want to go to special programs. So you charged us with looking at ways in which we can, you know, find some space for FNESU special programs that they've developed. So I'm going to ask Morgan and Michelle to give an update on where we're at with that. And there's also some cost analysis data that they're going to be sharing with you.
Yeah, if you can share that. So the NMV board and I believe the SU board both asked for the two of us to come back with some data around what it costs to send our kiddos out of district to a placement, and what the costs were that we were starting to see in terms of the programs that we're attempting to build here. So we looked at this year, and we did a very rough math look at it. We've got 7 kids right now out of district at alternative placements, and those are costing the SU somewhere north of $110,000 per kid. So that's tuition, that's the cost of having a one-on-one in some cases, transportation and other services. So to give you a ballpark, that's kind of where that is ending up. Right now, if we extrapolate what we think we're going to spend for the 4 programs that Michelle has developed, and just divide that out by the number of kids that we have in those programs now, it's coming in under $30,000 a kid. so pretty significantly less. When we talk about expanding that program next year, looking at things like a dedicated facility and more staff, the cost goes up, but it's still going to be less than half of what you're spending.
I was just gonna say, the only portion that we didn't think about, that I'm now thinking about, is the gen ed part. I don't know if that matters, if I absorb any of flexible pathways or not. That just came to mind. But it's still, like, factoring in a guess on a building, it was like 35,000 per student versus 115.
And so part of that math is because we have a lot more kids in those 4 programs, but we also still have capacity there. So if we end up with, even just pulling one kid back and putting them into one of these programs, that 110,000 goes away, but we probably don't add anything to the cost of the local program. So going forward, we will be able to, look backwards at real data and come up with an exact dollar amount. It costs us this much per kid or per FTE, since these kiddos tend to come and go.
Morgan, I'm sorry to interrupt. I know it's clunky with the virtual piece, but can you just clarify for me? You said, right, currently we have 7 kiddos at around 110,000 a child for all the associated costs of an out-of-district placement. Then you said something about pulling that in-house and a figure of around 30, 35, but does that presuppose us having a space for them already?
So we currently have some spaces that we've carved out of existing buildings. Michelle can talk about the functionality of those spaces. One of the things that we're going to show you that we tipped at the last meeting was putting out an RFP for a dedicated space for 2 of those 4 programs, something that would be kind of built out intentionally for the needs of those kids. So when we're talking about the $26,000 to $30,000 figure per kid, that's what we're anticipating this year, housing those programs in existing spaces. When we talk about the 35-ish per kid, that's what our best guess is now for fitting an intentional space, but not bringing any more kids in there. If we don't go the route, go ahead.
That's counting additional staff and everything. Okay.
If we don't go the route of a new space, we either because the board's not supportive or because we put out an RFP and nobody bids on it, we're probably going to have some significant build-out cost in the spaces that we are using, or at least 2 of them, because we're
Current space here is
patching it together.
Yeah, the current space of the middle high school program is
In the Monty house?
not here.
Yeah. Oh, the
It's-
180 here.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not working. It's not working well because I have 2 entrances, so people elope. We can't block. I brought Vern over today, like, how can I make it so there's only 1 entrance here and it can't, for the fire code and all sorts of stuff. It's just super challenging to contain students with challenging behaviors in the place that I currently have. It's not working. They're running around the school here, interrupting other students. This, I would have to find something different than this place here.
Right.
Like there's a fire extinguisher in the hallway that by code has to be there and has got used this week, and things like that.
The good news is it works.
Yeah.
It does work. That is true.
They're just
It's just,
Yeah.
I need some different space to make it work.
So I think on the money side, the short story is that we could we could either spend a lot more on our in-house programs or serve fewer kids, and it would still be significantly cheaper on a per-kid basis than sending them out to placements out of district. And as Michelle and Robin have talked about in previous meetings, those placements are harder and harder to come by. And they are cherry picking the children that they take in their limited spots.
Or they're taking students and then saying after 8 weeks, like, sorry, here, there you go.
I mean, and so even if we had a number of years where we needed to invest or either a new build or retrofitting an existing space to better accommodate our special programs, we may not realize those savings immediately, but they are there to be had moving forward for the long term. I mean, if we're looking at, on average, $110,000 a child, and really a lot of those placements don't even exist anymore, then even if we need to build a space or rent a space, we would still be actualizing, savings over time, certainly, and be able to better serve our children within their community.
To be able to step down and return them back to the general education setting. So what we're able to do with these programs is phase the transition in and truly provide a supported transition back into the school, which I think is going to increase the likelihood. We've already seen it. It increases the likelihood of students being able to return to the public school. So the hope is it's a shorter term intervention that will better support our students, and they don't have to be in the car driving an hour each way.
I was just gonna say, I would add our geographical location also puts the average student at 1 hour one way to attend these alternative programs. And luckily right now, they're mostly middle high school students, so they can sustain and do well with a 1 hour one-way trip. But that is a lot on a young child at an elementary age.
We have 3 kindergarten students at the trail house, that would be an hour in a taxi with a little 5-year-old, so.
And so up on the screen is the beginnings of an RFP that we would put out if the board's supportive. And just, roughly it's 2,500 square feet. If you are supportive of this and we move forward with it, and you know of anybody who's sitting on a big empty 2,500 square foot box that they want something to do with, it would be great to have them get in touch with us. I do think there's one building that might be in play, but we put this out. I'd probably put it out to the same group of people that we put out the bid for our office space, and we'd advertise it publicly as well and see if there were any developers who are interested in taking a bite on that.
So are we at a place where the board is interested in us moving forward with this and sending out an RFP to see if we get bids to create this space?
Yes, Mary had talked about like new build. I don't know if that's my desire, other than maybe part of the Cole Hollow.
Well, that's childcare. This is the special.
Oh, this is the special?
Special
Yeah,
programs.
I don't know if I necessarily would want to break ground anywhere. But I am definitely in supportive of.
And we're not allowed to at
Right.
PSU, so if
Right.
somebody's out there and says, yeah, I'll build you a building, it will cost X, and somebody else says, I'll buy and retrofit this building, it will cost you Y. We
Yeah.
can kind of compare the two
Yeah, exactly.
at that point.
What you'd be committing to is seeing what's out there.
Yes.
By putting out the RFP, you can see if there's anybody in the community that wants to come and make an offer, because we can't do it ourselves.
Right.
So they would come back and say, you know, we'll do it for this much money in this location. So, what do you think, Mary?
Yeah, I think we should move forward with this. I mean, I think that, I think it behooves us to at least put the RFP out there and see what we might be able to create. I think the situation is only gonna continue to worsen as far as accessibility to out-of-district placements.
If we find a space, do we have concerns about being able to staff the space?
That was my next question. Like, you build it, they will come, but will they?
I currently have, I think, enough space, and I'm building some systems that I feel I need less adults, and I can take on a few more students.
With staff.
I do.
Okay.
Got some good
Because
people.
these programs are already operating. They're just not
They're
operating in
not
that
operating in
space.
the space is the challenge for one program
Right.
that could be functioning.
But if you're
More
given
successfully.
more space,
I'm not
you
gonna
will fill more space. I mean, because the needs are definitely there.
I still have to have a max capacity
Right.
based on
No,
staffing.
exactly.
So the way I've been working with most schools is I'm in some space, based on our space,
Yeah.
I'll take your student, but you have to send a behavior technician with me,
Right.
with you, like, so like Montgomery is sending somebody and I'm going to need a person.
Right.
At least to start.
Right.
My hope is we can build some skills that might not be
Right.
needed and can send them back, but I can't, sometimes like, if you want your student to come here,
They have to.
you're gonna have to send me a person.
Right, I got you. Okay.
Yep.
Do you want a motion, Morgan?
I don't think so. We'll just go forward with an RFP. We would bring results back to you. February is my guess. And then when we get into the budget discussion, we'll have to decide what we want to pack in there.
So the last piece is that, the executive session retention strategy component.
So I move to go into executive.
By roll, Kat,
Sorry,
Erin,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
Polly,
Aye.
Mary is an aye. So we're exiting executive 7:35, there are no motions pending. Lynn, that was it for you?
That is it for me. We're gonna shift this over, to Morgan, and he's the only one that didn't return to the room.
Here we go.
Okay, well, we can just hold on a second
He's
for
coming.
Morgan and the financial report.
You're on.
So in your packet, I talked about the draft audit. I've not seen the second draft of that yet, but there were no concerns in the first one. One thing that we punted from last meeting was the financial management questionnaire. Again, this is a document that is required by statute. Lynn or her designee creates it, and then we're required to bring it to the board and just get a motion on the books to show that you reviewed it. I did send that out after your last meeting directly by email. And if you're so moved, I guess need a motion to authorize the vice chair to sign the financial management questionnaire. And then we can get that done tonight.
Where is it?
It's in your packet under Morgan's board report.
And I sent it to you by
Yeah,
email
exactly, that's what I was looking.
in November.
December, 20.
So I'll make that motion to have vice chair sign the financial management questionnaire. We'll do that by roll. Erin?
Aye.
Kat?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Polly?
Aye.
And Mary is an aye.
Thank you. Second update for you is we had the transportation contract bid due date yesterday. As predicted, we only saw one bid come in. We had two people that contacted me specifically and said that they were going to decline to bid, and then another half dozen that didn't reach out and didn't submit anything at all. Because we didn't get three bids, and because it's a transportation contract, there's some language in statute that basically requires us to get a waiver from the AOE to enter into this contract. So assuming that you're supportive of that, I will start that process tomorrow with the AOE. If the bid came in from Terracell, who's your current provider. It is an increase of, I think it was around 14% over the last year, which we will.
How much? How much, Morgan?
14%.
1-4?
1-4, which we were not surprised at. What I have heard was that they're basically using this opportunity to try to increase their drivers' pay because they can't find drivers.
Yeah.
So if you're not supportive of that, then somebody who's not me around this table has to take on running transportation for the SU directly.
Done.
And we gotta hire 30 more people.
I think we have no choice but to move forward with that process.
So I will start that tomorrow. And then one other motion that I need in case we don't meet or don't have a quorum in January would be a motion to accept all FY24 grant funds, including but not limited to Idea B Preschool, Medicaid, Title I, Title IIA, Title IV, 21st Century Learning Centers, BEST, and MAC. And some of these grants require evidence of a board motion in order for us to apply for them. And so that's why we bring that motion to you each year.
I'll move.
Thanks, Polly. By roll, Erin?
Aye.
Kat?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Polly?
Aye.
And Mary is an aye.
Okay, and so the last thing I have is discussion of the budget. And I'm going to be popping in and out of different share screens, and Courtney's going to be doing some of them as well. I'm going to start with the real 10,000-foot overview. And I know that, that every board member who is in the meeting tonight has at least gone through a local budget cycle, but I don't think Erin or Sarah has been through the SU budget. So I'm sorry if I am going a little slower on some of this less interesting stuff, but I'll try to fly through it. So up on your screen is the recap page that I sent to you just before your board meeting. At the SU level, you are at this meeting or at the January meeting approving a general fund budget. We actually have three separate general funds. We will combine them for the motion, but this first one that you see up top is a combination of all the stuff that we do centrally and that supports the districts. So special ed is a big piece of that, transportation, food service, the superintendent's office, the business office. All of those pieces and parts go into this, what I'm calling the general fund budget. And I'm going to speed through it, but we'll come back to it. What we do is we look at the revenue that's coming in. It's primarily special ed and food service revenue. And whatever you say we're allowed to spend and we don't think we're gonna raise somewhere else becomes the amount of money that we assess out to the two districts. So it's important to pay attention to that.
This is the closest thing to municipal budget, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Exactly. The two other general funds is we have the local spending for the 21st Century Program, which is your after-school program. So in the past, each of the two districts have said, you know, we're going to allocate X number of dollars to the after-school program out of our local funds. The 21st Century grant that we have has some requirements about coming up with matching funds for that. We do use some other grants to do that, but a big portion of that match is from what we call local funds. Because the staff already reside in the supervisory union, we pay them out of the supervisory union, we track them by the two districts, and we send you a bill. So the numbers that Heather brought to you at your local meetings, or that I brought to you at your local meetings in the November and December meetings, totaled is $369,000. So that's the two districts together would be kicking in $369,000. That's really part of your budget, but you'll see down in this green section below, you're getting that $369,000 from the districts. So that's kind of a wash, and it doesn't affect your other assessment.
So that's how much it's costing from both districts in order to fund their after-school programs.
That's how much the district taxpayers are contributing to support that.
To support
we have
Right.
grants on top.
And then the SU kicks that back out.
Right.
Right.
Right, it's just a mechanism
Yeah.
for us to get that money
I
from
got it.
local districts.
Similarly,
we have a local billback fund, and so this one is the same thing. It's the same amount of money is coming in from the district that we are being charged. This is for people who we are brokering across both districts. So last year we had a guidance counselor who was in Richford Elementary and Montgomery Elementary. We give them one contract at the SU and we say, Richford Elementary, your portion is this, Montgomery, your portion is that. We don't have to do that, say, between the two high schools because they're in the same district.
Right,
But if it breaks district, do
if it
that.
breaks district, okay.
We've done that for people who are funded partially out of consolidated federal programs, out of that grant. And, you know, maybe their halftime intervention is there, but they're doing halftime work. That's really a local expense and not part of that grant. Do the same thing.
Can you go back up and
Yep.
why, what's with the, keep going. Oh no, yeah, keep going. So the expenses on student support. Yeah, and so special ed, but we get
So
a
you
lot
wanted
of
to
that
come,
back and
yes.
right.
So you're wanting to get into details and we'll get to that.
Oh, okay, fine.
Jumping the gun. I just want everybody to kind of have a concept of those three general funds, and the one that impacts your two district budgets is really that first one.
Okay.
And that's because we're spending a certain amount of money and we are able to cover some of that with other funds, but not all of it. So we hop out of that. So you've seen this at your local level, local districts as well. Today, we're at December 21st. Hopefully we're finalizing a budget, and we don't actually sign a warning at the SU. Local districts do. If we do not finalize a budget tonight, we'll just have to figure out a time in January, ideally before the two districts meet, because when this board sets the SU budget, I can give an actual hard number to the districts for the assessment piece. I did just, at the beginning of this meeting, we got the second version of equalized pupils. The numbers have creeped up a little bit from what I shared at your 2 district meetings, which is a good thing. Overall, NMV's numbers are up a little bit. ERUs are down a little bit still, but at least they trended upwards from what we saw earlier this month. Your board goals, and I've had that in your local budget presentations as well. We did talk about all of these considerations for the SU budget. We still have a lot of question marks that are out there. We know a little better the SPED funding formula and what we're expecting next year. The universal meals bill is something that will require legislative action this session. We're pretty confident that it's going to be renewed and it's going to be paid somehow. We don't know how that is, but when I made assumptions on that revenue side for the SU budget, I'm assuming we're getting another big chunk of change for universal meals. This budget does have the updated transportation contract costs in it. And then we talked a little bit about the alternative programs, and when we get into the details, I'll talk about what we have in there. Enrollment we've covered in the past. The expense considerations, mostly around insurances, we've talked about. Want to just keep hammering on the ESSER funding cliff. In this budget, we've pulled the other half of Vern into local money. So as of next year, he would be completely out of ESSER. The folks who are still sitting out there in ESSER are Michelle Irish, your 3 instructional coaches who were here last month, 2 of your 4 homeschool coordinators, and then Gabby and Brittany and the other staff at Flexible Pathways Academy.
Will we know by next budget, if any of, or some, any, are going to go into the consolidated federal plan?
We will be coming with a plan.
Okay.
The problem with the consolidated grants is that we don't really know that until June or July.
Right, I was gonna say the timing is off.
Yeah. So, yeah,
Or
we
what
will
the
be able
plan
to.
is what, I got you.
Right.
Okay.
Weights.
Hmm?
Weights.
Oh, yeah, the waiting. Right.
The weights will work out in your
Work out.
favor, so that's at the local level, but we're anticipating that when they switch from equalized pupils to whatever they're calling the new equalized pupils, for FY25, that you're gonna have
Yeah,
better tax capacity.
right.
And so we may be playing this game with a lot of January meetings that year as we're, waiting to get those finalized numbers and see where it makes the most sense to land any of these people that you want to continue on.
I have a question. Is there a cap with the consolidated federal grant about how many positions you can sneak in there or not?
There's a dollar cap. So
There is a dollar
they
cap,
will say,
okay.
this is your allocation.
This is all you, okay. Okay.
And I think that's all the hired people that are in ESSER. If I'm missing someone, they're not. Yes.
We had other positions as strategies, but weren't able to fill them.
So staffing changes, and I sent an updated staff list to you as well in your packet, and we can pull that up if need be.
In this packet?
In the email that I sent about 4 hours ago.
Oh, nice.
And I can pull that up in a moment
Oh,
if
yes,
you want.
I got it.
I think all of this is basically the same as we covered last month. We had Sharon Wright, who is budgeted to do teacher mentoring, that model has been replaced by the coaches that Jody brought last month. We are moving 2 positions previously that were full-time special ed are now basically half-time special ed and half-time regular ed. One is for EST and one is for Title IX. Those are not new people, it's just moving where we're paying them out of. So they're coming out of, both out of the special ed side into the general ed side, but all part of your general fund budget. Each year we kind of reshuffle Jody's time and Mary Ellis's time and Jen Kennison's time. They're sort of the 3 people who are running the CFP grant. Based on where we ended up this year, I've moved a 0.1 FTE of one of them out of CFP into the general fund. As I had mentioned, we moved half of Vern from ESSER into the general fund, and then Melissa Wood, we're finally getting up to full-time in this budget. So when we talk about the regular ed portion, that's kind of those are the folks we're talking about. So really it's, in terms of new people, it's an extra day of Melissa Wood and losing a day of Sharon Wright. In Dawn's budget, among her line staff, there's a slight decrease in FTE, not a significant change. And then in the emerging multilingual learners, formerly known as ELL, we still have a 1.0 position there, and that's what we had in the budget for this year. A lot more changing on the special ed side. And so I'm going to talk about this 2 different ways. I talked about the general fund budget is the one that you control. We tend not to talk about the CFP budget because the way that it's written, it is really supposed to be add-ons to your local budget. You're not supposed to supplant people. It's really to try out new things or do things that you can't support locally. The special ed grants are a little bit different. We're going to get those, and so whereas if the state came and said next year you're not going to have any more CFP money, we would either be cutting the staff who are paid out of that or scrambling to find the positions in the local budget. But we would have that choice. If they said that for the special ed grants, it would be a different conversation because we've got some legal requirements to have those services provided. So for early ed, we had budgeted for 1.9 FTEs of teachers in this budget. We're actually at 3.0, and so the overall increase is a 1.1. We anticipate being able to use grants for that next year, so the increase to your general fund budget is only an addition of a half-time person.
Okay.
For special ed, we are pulling those 30 paras out of your local budget into the SU budget. So that's kind of the significant move here. We're offsetting that with cutting 4 contracted positions. Those are the ones that we generally hire from NCSS. But that's still a net increase of 26 people coming in. The actual overall increase is 24.1. The changes are primarily around SLPs. We've been carrying 7 SLPs in our budget for several years, and we aren't ever going to be able to fill that. And so I'm doing a little more reality-based budgeting. This budget has 5 in there. I think we'll all be happy if we can keep those 5 filled, and we'll make it work. Do you want to have anything? Okay. So talking about the increase to your general fund budget again, it's a half-time FTE for early ed, and with all those changes moving, as well as us being able to push some of these new folks, new to us folks into grants. The FTE increase for the general fund portion of special ed is 13.1.
So these 30 pairs are behavior technicians.
Behavior technicians and the folks in your alternative programs.
So that's including moving paras into, 30 paras in?
Yes, so 30 paras in, 4 contracted out, 2 SLPs out, that gets you the 24 increase
Right.
in. But we're able to move a bunch of those into grants.
Okay.
You know, we're anticipating more money in things like Idea B because that seems to be the trend. We do a little better paying for paraeducators with federal money than teachers because we are not taxed for their retirement. So making some of those shifts, which we weren't able to before, is allowing us to move more positions into grants than we had previously.
Okay.
And before we go to the staffing list, if you want to look at that, I've got these charts for your local districts, and so we'll put them in here, and we may use them in the stuff that we communicate out to your voters. Both you're familiar with. This one shows that about 2/3 of our cost is in personnel. You know, not quite a third is in services. A big chunk of that is your transportation contract, and then your tuition payments and the remaining workers that we hire from NCSS. It's that big chunk. The yellow slice is the stuff that we buy, and then we've got you know, some other smaller pieces here and there.
So the contracted services is the NCSS, so like salmon color. Is that correct?
The dark, the maroon color.
Maroon, other services? That's the NCSS contract?
Oh, sorry, NCSS is gonna be the salmony color, and
Right.
the dark one is gonna be your terrestrial contract.
That's, okay.
Pull these glasses down and I might get that answer right the first time. And then also similar to your local presentations, this is what we do. So it's split up in terms of instruction, support, and then I pulled the food service out separately. So the food service is that orange piece of the pie. The instruction, which is primarily special ed, is that extremely light green third of the pie. And then you can see the transportation is that kind of grayish maroon at 9 o'clock. And then the little slices of pie at the bottom are, you know, what we're anticipating spending on buildings, superintendent's office, the business office, school administration, or folks like Melissa Wood, and that's just how the state categorizes them. Board will be in here as well, and then student support would be OT, PT, speech, things like that. So that's what I have for that presentation, and I'm happy to hop back to it as well. I'll just kind of briefly show you the staffing list that I sent out to you.
So what you just showed me answers my question about that increase,
Okay,
right?
I forget the question.
When I said that student support line that increased significantly,
Yeah.
or not significantly, it was because of all that
So,
movement, the FTEs of 15.
Special ed and student support
Yeah.
both increased. The special ed increase is primarily bringing all those paras over.
Yeah.
And then the student support is, it's actually primarily bringing our speech people out of the grants. Those are those folks that we were getting taxed on, and then we're able to push more of the paras in Michelle's program into that grant.
Okay.
And so this is in your packet. I won't go into it in any detail, but I'll just show you it'll be split out by first location, budget unit. Will roughly tell you where in that budget overview they show up. And you'll see on the far right, like we've got Jody is up on top. 0.7 of her salary is in your local budget. That's because we are able to justify 0.3 of it under the grant. And so we're, where we can, we're moving people to any of the grant funds that you have. And so I can go back to, I can go to the detail, or if you'd like, I can go to, I can stay on that recap page. Here. I'll give you a quick walkthrough on the revenue. So again, the assessment here is the amount that if this budget is warned as is, we're going to need to raise from the two districts. Other local revenue, primarily things like the interest we earn on the checking account. Some of the food service income comes in under local, so if Dawn does a catering event, that cost will come in that way. If she's selling meals to teachers, money will come in there. State revenue is primarily special ed reimbursement. There's also some transportation money that we get there, and then some of the food service money comes in through that revenue, through that line. Federal revenue is all food service, so that's where the lion's share of her revenue comes in. And then the other revenue is money that we transfer in from Medicaid grant.
Are these numbers the local budgets that we saw? Are these numbers reflected in what we saw, or how far
No.
off are they?
I think they're gonna go down for one district and up for another, but I don't remember. I think I had assumed that transportation was going up, special ed was going down, and central office was staying the same. Because in the past we've split those three up. We're just going to give you one assessment because we really don't track them separately here.
Okay. Because that's what I have a hard time thinking, like, we're approving this budget, but what if it has a significant impact on the local that might influence my decision, right?
Yep.
So I guess that's.
So if you give me a couple of minutes, I can pull that together. And then here, we talked about this big increase in special ed and then the big increase in student support. The direct instruction, that's the ML position, and that's essentially flat. We've got a different person in that role, so it's either different salary or different benefits.
Right.
Instructional support, general administration, relatively unchanged. School administration, I think that's capturing part of that change for the Title IX work that we now need to do in the budget differently. Central services is primarily the finance office, Dominic and Jamie. Buildings and grounds, the increase here is, part of that is bringing the other half of Vern into your local budget. We've also got, hopefully a little more accurate budgeting on the central office space. And then the big change there is that we have budgeted, I think, $60,000 for the alternative program site for the first year. That's kind of a wild guess. It's based on, what we saw for rental rates at the central office bid, but that bid went out 2 years ago, so that may be short. And we may also put it out there and not find a space, and then that's money that we have in the budget. And then transportation, we talked about the contract going up. The lion's share is that. There is some special ed transportation in there as well, tied to those kids that we're hoping to be able to bring back in the future. Food service is down a little bit. We are anticipating that food costs are going to go up, but we were still budgeting in that pandemic mode. We think that this summer program is going to be dramatically smaller next year. So that's sort of the assumptions behind that.
So it's safe to assume that the increase in expenses here, particularly with those paras, we're gonna see the decrease in the local budget.
Yes. I mean, the risk is always that it gets lost in the noise of the rest of the budgeting.
But it,
But, yeah, those are positions that have come out, have been tucked in kind of here and there last year. So also in your packet is the extremely detailed budget. So this will give you the line-by-line breakdown. And you can follow these blue bars kind of roughly track with the different lines here, although I have combined a bunch of them to try to get this recap page to be a little more digestible. But that's going through, and again, primarily based on people. We have made some assumptions around the paraeducators and the food service employees in terms of where those salaries are going. Those are the contracts that we're negotiating this spring. The teachers, to the extent that the same people are coming back, I think we've got them pretty accurately budgeted for. And then I've used an amount that I think is sufficient for central office folks, none of whom have settled the contract.
Okay. The final column on that itemized budget,
Mm-hmm.
with the percentages, that's percentage increase?
Increase or decrease, yep.
Okay.
Morgan, can I ask a question?
Sure.
I couldn't tell if Polly was finished.
Yeah, sorry, yes.
Okay. This budget, does it include where we might land depending on the RFPs for the special programs and what we might then be leasing for space? Would that be embedded in district budgets, or is that embedded in this budget?
That's embedded in this budget, and that's a big chunk of the this increase here in the buildings and grounds line.
Okay. And then my other question is, and I'm sure the answer is yes, but I just wanted to clarify, for all of the central office staff that are up for negotiating with Lynn, that any increases in salaries are already reflected in this budget too?
So they're not concluded, but there is an approximation of that in there.
Okay, that's my question, that buffer is there.
Yeah, I don't know if it's enough, but I think looking historically on what we've seen the last few years, that I've got enough money tucked in there for that.
And that transportation budget includes this 14% increase.
Correct.
And the food service budget, because we've been hearing from Dawn about, and as we all know, in our own pocketbooks, the increase in food prices, has that budget been increased a bit to reflect rising costs for food service?
So that's probably the area that I'm most worried about, because we don't have a lot of control over the costs. I mean, we're going to serve lunch to whoever needs lunch. We've gone over it a few times. We've made some assumptions that food costs are going to continue to go up, but we're also anticipating serving less meals as we get farther and farther from the throes of COVID, when we were, it seemed like we were pushing food out of our kitchens 24/7.
And last year, I remember food service, I don't think it was 2 years ago, last year went up like over 300,000, and that was in anticipation of further rising costs, which, as Mary's saying, like we've seen, but so I'm not as scared, I guess, when I saw that decrease, because it went up substantially last year.
Right, and it's quite possible we overshot that.
So Morgan, ideally, order of operations, it would be good to pass this budget prior to district budgets, correct?
Correct. And I think what we did last year was we passed the budget in December, and the sense of the room was that if, in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we get something radically different in terms of revenue coming in, or some changes from the state, and the SU board felt like it needed to revisit that, they could warn a meeting and pull it together. Your side, the NMV side, hopefully will be warning their budget on the 4th of January. So that's practically tomorrow. In the past, NMV has occasionally punted that meeting to after the Enosburg-Richford meeting, so that Enosburg-Richford could set their tuition rate, which is a big factor in terms of the NMV budget. So we may end up seeing a kind of a waterfall of special meetings. But you certainly could go forward with a budget tonight, and then leave it be if we get to January 4th and then January 11th for ER, and everything is still feeling good.
Yeah. That makes sense to me. How are other people feeling?
And then the other piece of that is you are really approving a spending plan as this board. So I'm gonna give you a number that starts with 11 million, and you're gonna say we're gonna approve a budget, general fund budget of 11 million. If the state comes back and says, we're anticipating that your special ed revenue is going to go up by X number of dollars, I can plug that in here and reduce the assessment. It doesn't affect what you as the SU are spending, but it would affect what we are going to warn in your local budgets for the assessment. that can cut both ways.
Right,
Right.
it can
Right.
cut both ways, right.
But if it cuts the wrong way, you will have the opportunity to warn a meeting to reconsider.
Okay. Yep. Yes,
Yes.
so you need a motion?
So if you're so inclined, it would be, let me get out of here. To approve the FY '24 Franklin Northeast Supervisory Union General Fund budget of $11,571,680.
I'll make that motion.
All right, thanks, Polly. By roll, Erin,
Aye.
Kat,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
Polly,
Aye.
and Mary is an aye.
And that's all I have for you unless there are questions. I think I've done enough here.
All right, thanks, Morgan. So that brings us to our central office updates. I know we're missing a number of people. So first up is Jody. Do you have anything you'd like to share or add to your report, Jody?
I don't have anything to add, but I did just want to highlight the growth that we saw in the early literacy data for kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and third grade as compared to last year, which is good growth toward your goal about early literacy. I'm expecting to see more growth this year as well.
Thanks so much, Jody. Michelle Taberge.
So I have been working with principals around the new definition of specially designed instruction that the Agency of Education has put out, and it means that instruction, when a student is in special ed, instruction is delivered in an explicit, intentional, systematic manner, and it is directly tied to their IEP goals. So we spent some time talking about what that meant and then observing to see if special educators are doing specially designed instruction. That's where I spent most of my month.
Thanks, Michelle. Is Michelle Irish? You are still with us virtually. There you are. You are.
Yeah, I emailed you a revised copy of my board report. I received some information today from the Insight Education Group's equity audit. They are wrapping up and putting the final package together for us, and they sent me a few highlights that I put on that on the revision, on that update. I believe the plan is to pull the board together for another work session in January. I think, Lynn, correct me if I'm wrong, that was our plan, to kind of unpack that report when it comes out in its entirety. So I haven't seen the whole thing yet. I've just gotten some highlights, but there are some there for you, some high-level recommendations, as long as also some of the strengths and some of the high-level opportunities for growth that were in there. The good news is, under the recommendations, I feel like we have already started to implement, or have created plans to implement many, if not all, of the recommendations that they previewed for me. So I feel really good about that. I think we had a sense of what some of the direction we needed to be working on even before the report came out. So that's really good. The other piece of information I had for you on that report was around our hidden curriculum audit that we've been working with Dr. Haslam on. And this quarter, we're doing the audit around rules and expectations. So really looking at, how do our rules and expectations promote agency, self-regulation, and responsible decision-making, which I think will be in support of a number of our board goals, but specifically the one around graduation with proficiency, according to kids' PLPs. So those are two pieces of information I wanted to just highlight for you.
so much, Michelle. Is Heather Moore with us today? I
No,
can't see her
Heather
in
is
the
not.
room. Was that Lynn?
Heather is not.
She's not, okay, and Jamie is not, Dawn is not, Melissa is not, Robin is there, Robin?
So the schools have continued to participate in their egress drills, and some exciting work that we did with building principals last week was getting the building leaders to look at some of the tools that are available for working with their staff in order to implement some of the ALICE-specific strategies moving forward for the remainder of this year. So the building leaders were able to look at some of the resources and play around with those sites so that they could bring that back to their staff to do some work there so that the staff are comfortable and informed about how to roll that out with the students. So we're hoping during the month of January, early February, that staff will be working with students on rolling out the lockdown. So hopefully in the coming months, I'll be able to report out on how that is going for our students. But I think, as you've heard Lynn say previously, a lot of this work was kind of put on hold as we were working through the pandemic. So for some of our younger students, this will be very new, and for the rest of the students, it will have been quite a bit of time since they've heard and had some practice around this.
There have been some revisions to the strategy a little bit, which would be new to the students. Some of the language, right?
Yes, yes, and they've also included a pretty explicit strategy around alert and inform that they previously didn't intentionally teach. So there's a lot of really good explicit lesson plans for the staff to interact with. And I believe the leaders have some plans on how they're gonna allow their staff to interact with that so that they feel comfortable and informed enough to implement that with the students within their classes.
Great, thank you so much, Robin. Gab, do you have anything that you'd like to highlight or add? I know you did already quite a spotlight.
I won't say much, but two things. One, the initial literacy data, and also just anecdotally, Brittany is sharing that kids are really doing very well and improving in reading, so I'm excited to see. I hope that shows up in the assessments that we've been doing this month. And then the second thing is, this year I really tried to limit the number of technologies that we were using to just streamline it. And I've been collecting data on sort of how many kids are using it, how much time they're spending on it, all of that stuff, so that we can kind of pull that together and see what's useful and maybe what's not useful, so that we can be efficient about using that technology.
Great, thanks, Gab, appreciate it. Vern, you have anything you'd like to highlight on your report?
Just, we've got some projects going on next week, obviously that we can't do during school, so we've got some new refrigeration going to Enosburg Elementary to update some of the old outdated stuff. Trying to get wound up for 2023 summer projects. A little slow out of the gate on that. PCB testing, still waiting on that. And started getting got one bid today that came in for the modular classroom, so hopefully, I'm hoping we'll get 3, and then we can take a step back and assess what we're going to do to move forward on that.
We'll be bringing that to the NMV meeting in early January, what we have for those cost estimates.
Any bites on the Richford boiler?
I put it out. I've had two. I put it out online.
Yeah.
Had one person that was a little shady. I actually called yeah.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, I put it out to Vermont, and I've actually been contacted by 2 schools.
Oh, good.
Over the last week.
Oh, good.
So I'm hopeful. I
Yeah.
just, yeah, you know, I hate to, somebody should be able to use it.
No, right, exactly. Okay.
Great, thanks Fern, appreciate it. Any other, moving on to board business now, any future agenda items that folks want to mention now? So next meeting, January 18th. Anything else tonight, folks?
I don't think so. I'll move to adjourn.
What was that?
I said I'd move to adjourn.
All right, well, I hope everyone has a really lovely holiday season. Motion to adjourn, it's 8:28, all in favor, say aye. Thank you all so much.
Bye.